There is no way. And as the regular season comes to a close for the Toronto Blue Jays, trade rumors are starting to escalate. And one recent report from a St. Louis Cardinals insider has revealed a shocking report surrounding the St. Louis Cardinals and the Toronto Blue Jays and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I'm going to break down that report and discuss what it entails, as well as break down what this means going forward for the Toronto Blue Jays. Stay tuned for all that on this episode. But before we get into that, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. It would mean the world to myself and Peter if you could hit that button. We're on the road to 14,000 subscribers. And if you enjoy the daily content, make sure to hit subscribe. Now, the regular season, only a handful of games left. Playoff race is happening. The Detroit Tigers obviously had a crazy turnaround at the trade deadline. There's so much going on around baseball. But for the Toronto Blue Jays, a bit of a different story going on. They're not going to be making the playoffs the first time in a handful of years. But what is going to happen is a ton of changes in this offseason. And this has been noted as, from a bunch of insiders, whether it's Ben Nicholson-Smith, Shai Davidi, as the biggest free agency, the biggest offseason, whatever you want to call it, in a very long time for the Toronto Blue Jays. As you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. entering the last year of his contract. You have Bo Bichette entering the last year of his contract. You have a lot of pitchers entering the last year of their contract. And they need to make some changes, and they need to make them very, very fast. And rumors are starting to escalate already. And obviously the offseason is going to be filled with a bunch of different crazy rumors and things like that. But this one is starting early, and it's revolving the St. Louis Cardinals. So this one is super interesting. So Cardinals insider suggests blockbuster trade for the Blue Jays, $250 million star. This was only 3 days ago this dropped, so this isn't old news. This just happened. And obviously the Cardinals are in an interesting spot as well, similar to the Blue Jays in a way. Will the Cardinals pull off a stunner? The St. Louis Cardinals has a question at first base right now. The Cardinals had Paul Goldschmidt as the team's starting first baseman since 2019 and has everything the team could have asked for. He has been a true superstar, but will be a free agent at the end of the season, and there will clearly be multiple suitors for him. Now, this is the interesting part. The two sides are going a different direction, obviously referring to Paul Goldschmidt and the St. Louis Cardinals. There'll be a few options available in free agency to fill his shoes, whether that's Pete Alonso, Christian Walker, Anthony Rizzo. However, they won't be the only players available, as one player who was talked about as a trade candidate throughout the summer is Toronto Blue Jays star Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's unclear if he will get moved, but the St. Louis Post-Dispatch's Derek Gold suggested him as a hypothetical option. Now, obviously, it makes a ton of sense for the St. Louis Cardinals because they're losing their star first baseman who's starting to age a little bit in Paul Goldschmidt. But when you're looking at this from the Blue Jays' perspective, the rumors are never going to stop. And these reports from other teams, from other insiders, are always going to be there when you have one of the premier players in baseball. And the Blue Jays have that in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And again, if you're a Cardinals fan watching this, or if you're just, you can understand it from the Cardinals' perspective. The other available options at first base aren't terrible. Pete Alonso is very good. Christian Walker is very good. Anthony Rizzo, he's okay. But when you're looking at the best first baseman available, it would be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But the question is, us as Blue Jays fans, there is no world, hopefully, that the Toronto Blue Jays entertain even shopping Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And the reason for that, obviously, is coming off of one of the best seasons, if not arguably the best season of his career. 2021 probably surpasses it, but the second best, let's say for argument purposes, second best season of his career. Unbelievable year. We're getting to his stats in a little bit, but just a crazy year. And he said he wants to be in Toronto. He's reposted Instagram stories saying he wants to be in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform for life. He's done everything for the community. He wants to be in Toronto, and he wants to be a Toronto Blue Jay. I don't see a world where the Toronto Blue Jays even entertain trading Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at this point. Now, if they decide to go a different direction, I think there's a higher chance they trade Bo Bichette. And I'm sure we'll be covering a lot of reports surrounding Bo Bichette because his name is going to be brought up in tons of trade talks this offseason. John Rossi recently went on a Sportsnet broadcast and basically said that his name is going to be in the forefront of trade talks, which makes sense because if they want to go a different direction, they could trade Bo Bichette. They are not going to hopefully trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because they need to build around him. They need to extend him. He is the guy. He is the future of the Toronto Blue Jays. And the article basically goes on to say that, quote, there are some hitters who will be available via trade that have not yet surfaced. A lot of eyes will be on Toronto and what the Blue Jays elect to do with Vlad Jr. and how the first base market will shift and move around that. I have a short list of potential trades that I'm asking around about and trying to confirm if the Cardinals will be / could be involved. And that may lead to the ones I've not yet uncovered. So obviously, I don't think the Jays are going to entertain trading Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think at this point, there's a higher chance that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. starts at third base for opening day next year than he is a St. Louis Cardinal. That being said, the fact that all of these trades keep coming up lends credit to the fact that, A, the Jays have been a disappointment, because if the Jays were winning, they were making playoffs every single year and actually winning in the playoffs, none of these trade conversations would happen. We wouldn't be having this conversation about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being traded, or Bo Bichette being traded, or any of these guys being traded. The problem is now, obviously, they've failed to succeed in the playoffs whatsoever, and as a result, they've been, at this point, disappointing in this Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Bo Bichette era, and that's why all of these trades keep happening. Obviously, at the trade deadline, one of the hottest topics was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Was Ross Atkins going to trade Vladdy? Was Ross Atkins going to trade Bo Bichette? What were they going to do with that pair? And they ultimately kept both of them. Now, at the time, Bo Bichette was obviously rumored to be one of the guys who was most likely to get traded at the deadline. Not really most likely, obviously, besides the rentals and a lot of those guys. But out of the stars between Vladdy and Bo was more likely to get traded. And that remains true. However, Guerrero is under team control for the 2025 season, but then will enter free agency. He has been one of the best young players in baseball and projected to receive a deal in the range of 10 years, $250. I think he's going to crush that number. I think he's going to get more than $250 million. And basically, like, if he reaches free agency, I could see a world where he becomes maybe a Cardinal, maybe a different team. But the Jays are going to do everything in their power to lock him up this offseason. That is going to be the story of this offseason. There's a million of them. There's extending Vladdy, maybe extending Bo Bichette, probably trading Bo Bichette. All of these things are going to happen in a very short period of time. The offseason is only a few months, and obviously it seems like a ton of time. It's going to be a while before we get to see the Blue Jays play baseball again after the season ends. But it's going to go by very quickly, especially with all of these things that are happening. You remember 2 months ago, Ben Nicholson-Smith asked Ross Atkins whether the Blue Jays considered trading Vladdy or Bo at the deadline. Ross said via Zoom tonight they're a part of the team's future, not close. It was never our intention to trade them. So the fact that all of these rumors keep going down, you rewind back to before the deadline, before Vladdy had an unreal second half, a blockbuster trade proposal lands Vladdy in Seattle, so Vladdy and Jimmy Garcia for Ford, Arroyo, Morales, Luis Suispel. Like, obviously the Mariners ended up making a trade with the Toronto Blue Jays for Justin Turner, but like, these trades are getting a little bit out of hand to a degree, and I think at this point the Jays are not going to move Vladimir Guerrero Jr. this offseason. That being said, there is obviously a world where some crazy things happen. Like, crazy things have happened in the Blue Jays moving on from a guy like Vladdy. It could happen. I just think at this point they're going to want to fork up the money, whether it's $300 million, maybe even $350 million. We've heard rumors about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being willing to play third base. We saw it a lot more in the second half of the year, even though we still didn't see it very much. And if they want to go out and they want to start Vladdy at third, they want to put maybe Spencer Horwitz at second, sign a guy like Pete Alonso to play at first, and you go all in for offense, then maybe there's a world where you just say, hey, screw the defense, we go full in on offense, and then you can justify that contract more, because if Vladdy plays a sustainable third base, nothing fancy, but, you know, something that you're like, okay, it's sustainable, he can play there, he's not going to be a horrific defender, then your offense and your team gets a lot better because you can move guys like Horwitz to first or DH. It opens up the DH spot more. You can sign guys like Pete Alonso. You can sign guys that can play DH more. Even a guy like Teoscar Hernandez, who is a primary outfielder but can play DH. Like, it opens up a world of possibilities, and I think that's a direction the Jays are going to go. But reports are going to be like this with us all summer long, and I do suspect a big blockbuster trade to happen this offseason. I'm just not sure it's going to be Vladdy Jr. But let me know in the comments your thoughts are on this. Do you want to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. traded? And enjoy the last few handful games of Blue Jays baseball as the season comes to an end. We'll see you guys tomorrow.